Welcome to week 27 notes and lecture, part 2. So now we're going to move from talking about county jails to talking about state prisons. Prisons are state facilities and only for offenders who have been sentenced to more than a year of incarceration, more than a year. Remember, jails are a year or less. This is more than a year. Prisons are designated by security level. Inmates are classified by custody level. This is really important, guys, really important concept here. Security level, custody level. And for the safety of everyone, they should match. So we want a high custody level inmate to be in a high security level facility. Otherwise, bad things could happen. So the very first place that a state inmate goes is to a reception center to be classified. And during classification, we're figuring out what their custody level is to find out which security level facility they should go to. And in New York State, there are 2 reception centers. Elmira Reception, which you, I'm sure, have already heard me say Elmira Correctional Facility, which is a prison, a maximum A security prison. And within it, they have a separate area that is the reception, Elmira Reception. So two facilities inside one, if you will. And the other is called Downstate Reception, and Downstate is actually the name of the prison, Downstate Correctional Facility. And so it's the same thing as Elmira. Downstate is a Max A prison, which is the most serious. Most people in a Max A are doing 25 to life. And so within that prison, there's a reception area. So every single state-ready inmate goes to either Elmira or Downstate to be classified. They go to reception to be classified. And what is classification? Classification is to determine the appropriate facility, security level, the inmate should be sent to. And this process usually takes about 3 months. 3 months to be classified. The PSI, remember that report, the pre-sentence investigation report, the current offense, and the length of sentence are major factors that are used to determine the custody level of the inmate. So this is how they decide, the Department of Corrections decides which facility that inmate should go to, and it's based on the PSI, the current offense, and the length of sentence that they were given. The highest security prison that we have is called a supermax. And this is really important. Offenders or inmates do not go to a supermax prison from the street. They only go there from other prisons. So what that means is if you are sentenced to or you are classified as a maximum A security inmate, you go to a maximum A prison and you commit a murder in that prison, you escape that prison because that maximum A is the highest security that we have. And if you do something like that, you are now a supermax inmate and you will go to a supermax facility. So murderers do not go to supermax facilities from the street. You have to commit another crime inside a prison, a high security prison, in order to go there. Please, guys, let me know if you have questions on that paper. So as I said, it is only for high-risk inmates who escape or attempt to escape or commit a serious crime while in prison. The Max A is the most secure and high security facilities that we have in New York. And this is all specific to New York State. Most inmates have been sentenced 25 to life in prison. And Elmira, Sing Sing, Attica, Greenhaven, Clinton, these are very very hard facilities. They're I hate to say famous, infamous. There's a lot of history, a ton of history that goes in each of these facilities. And I can't wait till we're back together so I can really talk to you about all of this. Our next level below a max A is a max B, maximum B. And most of the inmates that are in those facilities, they're doing anywhere from 15 to 25 years. So it's still a serious prison. It's still hard. It's not quite as hard as the max A, but you have some very serious offenders. And it's no joke working in those facilities. And in our neck of the woods here, Coxsackie Correctional, you might have heard of it. It's down in Hudson. It's about an hour south of here. That is a maximum B security prison. From there, we have medium, which is less secure. It's usually dormitory housing as opposed to the single cells. Refer back to our jail architecture. Our max A's and max B prisons are going to be still in that linear style, and that is for safety and security because those inmates are that dangerous. But when you start getting into the medium security, medium and minimum security prisons, you can use the dormitory or indirect direct supervision housing units. And the picture that I have here is Green Correctional, which is also down in Hudson, and actually it's right next door to Coxsackie Correctional. So two prisons side by side. One is a max B and one is a medium. And so in this facility and in mediums, as I said, it's a little bit less secure, open dormitory style housing, but also the inmates have a bit more freedom to move around the facility. They can go from point A to point B without being escorted. That does not happen in a max A. You need to go to the nurse, the CO will take you. You need to go back to your cell, the CO will take you. But in a medium, you just let the officer know and he lets you go. So that's the medium. And then we have our minimums, minimum security facility, which includes shock incarceration camps. These facilities do not have fences or walls, and the inmates there usually have a 1 to 3 year sentence. So it's pretty short time. And, well, what kind of an offender goes, only gets a 1 to 3? Well, nonviolent, lower level felonies, first time felonies. So this is, we're just graduating down in seriousness. It is still considered a prison, even though it's more like a camp. I mean, if you were to walk off property, that is considered an escape. So you still have to follow all the rules and do everything you're supposed to do. But honestly, people that are, looking to go home in a year or two, they're not going to risk not, doing something stupid generally. And so you see here, I'm going to get into shock in a minute, shock incarceration camps, shock program. But you see this picture over here. It says State of New York, Department of Correctional Services, Moriah Shock Incarceration Facility. It's New York has been a pioneer in the field of corrections forever. And we invented shock for the rest of the country. It's really interesting stuff. And Camp Moriah, Camp Monterey, two shock camps in the state of New York. And we invented it, we created it, and the rest of the country followed us. So this map is the most current map that I have of all of the facilities in the state of New York. It's kind of hard to read. The writing is really tiny, but you can see there's dots all over the place. We have a lot of facilities. So this is, maximum security, medium security, minimum, etc. And I have the next slide. Actually, I think this is a better map. This might be just a bit outdated, but it's so much easier to read. So maximum security. All of these prisons are maximum A or maximum B, the hardest of the hardest. And so you can look to see where the black ovals are around the state of New York. And then you see medium security, which is our red squares. And there's a whole lot of those, even more. And then we have a few of those minimum security facilities. So these are all job opportunities, career opportunities. The Department of Corrections is a state agency, and there's thousands of positions that you might get with Department of Corrections. So this is a link to Doc's website for jobs. If I click it, I was afraid of that. So it actually was a corrections officer exam notice, and I have one of those, so that's okay. But the link brought me right to Department of Corrections Community Supervision. So you guys have that in your slides. You can just click the link and check out the Doc's website. And these are some other links. You can click them, and these are for job announcements for exams for corrections officer. But the problem is because they're old, they may not be live anymore. This one looks like it's going to work. So here we go. Open competitive exam, correction officer trainee. Remember, this is all civil service. So this is old. I just put this in here for you to see what it looks like. Minimum qualifications. Read through this. Duties. All right. Physical medical requirements. Drug testing, psychological background investigation, character and fitness, and then traineeship as a corrections officer trainee. Subjects of exam. What are you going to be actually tested on the written exam? I hope this all sounds familiar, because the process of being hired as a police officer, all the same stuff for corrections. So this tells you what your written exam is going to be on, and there's some study guides, and you just need to read through that on your own if you're interested. I'm going to close that out and go back to our notes just to see what else we have. Sorry. Okay. And here's one local. So this is really important. You can either be a state corrections officer, which means you're going to work in a prison, which means you are a state employee. You get a state pension, a state benefits, state, all of that. But if you go to work for a county jail, you are a county employee. You have your benefits and pay are dependent on that county's contract. So this one was for Saratoga County corrections officer that they were advertising. And you see the salary here, and this one's even older yet, but I just wanted you to get an idea of how these notices are. A lot of the same information, minimum qualifications, what's on the written test. It's right there, subject of the exam, physical agility exam. So there's a lot of the same stuff working, trying to get hired as a county corrections officer as opposed to a state corrections officer. And because you know the big difference between jails and prisons, you now know that, being a CO in one is pretty different than being a CO in the other. So I'm going to close that out. And our last little bit here. New York State was the pioneer for the shock incarceration camp model. The very first shock camp in the country was Camp Monterey. And everyone else around the country followed us. And I kind of said that already. So Camp Monterey was known as the home of shock. And it opened in 1958. Governor Cuomo closed it in 2014. A piece of corrections history has been lost forever. So what is shock? Shock is a 6-month program. The original prison sentence is suspended, and it is only for certain type of offenders. So the inmate must be a first-time felon, no prior felonies on their record. Have a non-violent felony. Plead guilty to the felony with no appeal. Be between the ages of 20 and 40 years of age. Follow all rules of the camp and successful completion of the program. If the offender quits or gets kicked out of shock, they will go directly to prison to serve their original sentence, which usually would have been a 1 to 3. So you can go home in 6 months if you successfully complete shock, or you can do 1 to 3 years in a harder facility. This is basically a last-ditch effort to get somebody on the straight and narrow to get themselves together. And it has proven the shock program is very successful for the right offender. It is not for everybody. So before we conclude, I haven't really told you what all is involved with shock besides the fact that it's 6 months, but you could probably see from the pictures that it's very much like military boot camp. You are up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You have to do PT. You will learn military decorum, how to march, how to salute, how to, all that stuff. There is work, physical work at the camp, and there's also educational programs. And you must participate in all of those things completely with no discipline problem in order to successfully complete the program. And you will have drill instructors screaming at you. And for a lot of these offenders, it's really hard. They've never had discipline in their life, and now they've got the full military experience. I worked with inmates who actually failed shock or quit and said, I would rather go to prison than be in that program. So it really is hard for a lot of offenders, but the ones who successfully complete it really do turn their lives around. And some of the links that I've shared with you on another doc, show what a shock program is. So you should watch those videos. Okay, this is the end of your notes for week 27.